media. They've bragged about their new H-6K bomber, which is based on the 1956 Russian Badger bomber. And that bomber was redesigned and retrofitted with new technology to become a cruise missile platform. A platform for what? Firing cruise missiles. What type of cruise missiles? Well, you've just heard last week that China just tested their new hypersonic missile designed to kill carriers. And this plane could also reach U.S. shores, get close to the U.S. waters, fire off these cruise missiles that can hit U.S. targets. I mean, look at the preparations that are taking place is tremendous. And I'm telling you right now, before China hits the button to take out the U.S., before they do that, they will dump all their treasury holdings, and they can do that. Folks, we're talking about, there's a $23 trillion credit bubble in China. There's all sorts of bubbles. Well, look, I've said it months ago. China knew that they will have to blow bubbles to eventually beat the U.S. at their own game. Okay? Even in the shadow banking sector, there are bubbles there, there are issues there. But the beauty of the Chinese issues, especially the shadow banking, the beauty of it is this. When something goes bust in the shadow banking industry in China, those toxic assets are quickly purged from the system. Okay? Things are taken care of. People get paid, assets are taken, and the books are wiped clean. In other words, the system is purged the way it's supposed to be purged. Whereas over here, when something happens, there's a bailout and there's a stimulus, and all the toxicity just not only stays in the system, but grows exponentially. Whereas in China, it's quickly purged. So even there's bubbles in the shadow banking system, that's okay. Why? Well, you're talking about the largest, most liquid foreign market in the world, number one. Number two, you're talking about a country that has more hard assets than anyone in the world. Folks, let me ask you this. If you're still thinking, hey, should I buy gold? Is gold a good investment? If the Chinese are buying it, don't you think you should? And that's the thing, folks. They can absorb, because of the liquidity and the amount of hard assets, they can absorb a dollar dump. And like I said, they don't need us. And I said that multiple times. People need to understand that China does not need U.S. anymore to buy their cheap junk. They've done that the last decade or so in order to siphon as much dollars from our country into theirs, and then on top of that use our dollars to buy infrastructure, to build their military, to carve up Africa, to do all sorts of backroom deals that need to get done all over the world in order for them to prosper. They've been using our worthless paper to buy valuable assets. Brilliant, well-played move on China's part. Okay.
Unrestricted warfare. V, just hold that thought, Steve. Hang in there, folks. We're at the top of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report live broadcast on this, the 24th day of January 2014. Doug Hagmann, Joe Hagmann together. We are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Two very special, very important guests. Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com. V, the guerrilla economist at roguemoney.net. Two of my favorite people. We'll be right back after this. Perhaps after we get back, V can comment on whether we should keep our money in our 401ks.
It's hard to imagine when things are going reasonably well, just how quickly things can change. But what would it take? Economic collapse? Massive crop failure? Chemical or biological attack? So many situations could find you in the grocery looking to pick up food for your family only to find that the shelves are empty. There's nothing. Don't let that happen. Act today to make sure that if it ever comes to that, you and your family will be provided for. Visit freezedryguy.com to look at the wide variety of survival foods available. Freeze-dried foods from the Freeze Dry Guy store longer, rehydrate faster, are nutritionally superior to, and taste better than any other long-term storage food available. Visit freezedryguy.com or call toll-free 866-404-3663. freezedryguy.com.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagman here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagman and Hagman Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Northeast intelligence. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. You have that luxury. You have the luxury.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Friday broadcast of the Hagman and Hagman Report. I'm Doug Hagman with Joe Hagman. Together we are the Hagman and Hagman Report. Gentlemen, before we move on, and we cut the top of the hour break a little short, before we move on, Steve, a gentleman that you know, a gentleman that you're aware of, just real quick, about 2.5, 3 minutes, wants to interject something very quickly. I think it's extremely important. Thank you for yielding your time. W, go ahead.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to add, and of course, you know from our conversations earlier today, Doug, what my concern is specifically related to Sochi. But you hear all of these areas that the gentlemen have raised right now, and if we go back to conversations that we've been having for the last year, one of the issues is while the public is being pulled right and left and up and down, with this conflict and another conflict and another conflict, you have to step back and really realize that none of them happen in an isolated manner. What you have is really only just a contest, a tug of war between multiple locations over which one will be the point of initiation of what is going to happen next. It's not that all of these things, one of them is going to happen or another one is going to happen. They are going to happen. Do you understand that one creates a context, precipitates a moment of opportunity in the hearts and minds of the other players? Because as soon as the Mideast starts to become embroiled in some new conflict, and Russia starts to do what it's going to do related to Syria, the Chinese say, this is our chance. The U.S. is sucked up into that, and now we can strike. India, Britain, France, this is going to be a world conflict. But it starts most likely in the context related to Syria and what Putin must do, because he is going to be on the ropes. Those riots occurring across Russia are very serious. The economic situation there is at a precipice. And his one way out, his one moment
when he will be justified. In his eyes, he can make an image for the whole world that he's justified to do what he has to do, is that moment. All of these things are building up. And all the other players, these sharks are swimming, and they're waiting for that moment. And when the blood's in the water, they're all going to go into a frenzy. That's the crisis. And ultimately, it is not just a military conflict. The real game at play here goes back to the banksters. Because at the end of this game, the people that are pulling all the strings have a plan to come out on the other side of all of this with a new world order based on economics. And they're in charge. They're at the top of the pie. That's what this is all about. And all these things that these gentlemen have raised in this conversation come down and come into focus with that one piece of information. Whatever starts this, wherever it starts, I believe Sochi is the key thing. But, you know, the tinder is so dry, and it's a mile deep. Wherever it starts, you can guarantee, you can know where it's going to end. New world order based on economics with these players at the top of the heap is what they believe.
Very
that
good.
That was the only thing I wanted to add, guys. And great show, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, W.
Well said, W. Well said.
All right. God
Thanks,
bless
gentlemen. I'll continue to listen, and I hope your audience appreciates what they're getting as far as a head start on what's coming. All right, guys. Good night.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, W. You know, Doug, what the picture I get before my mind, maybe this will help people. I'll give an analogy or a metaphor. Imagine a pool table, and imagine each of the 6 pockets being one of the major players. And imagine that, you know, the balls are racked. And, oh, could I take off on a segue on that? But the balls are racked, and the cue ball is in motion. But even though, you know, a skilled player knows the predictability of you know, his different shots, whether it's a bank shot or, you know, breaking the, whatever you call it, I'm not, excuse me, I'm not a pool player, but, you know, breaking the triangular shaped group of balls. The bottom line is you have reciprocal effects. And this is something that I think W is, I'll sign it, a great statement from the international bankers themselves. They make more in one day of war than a year of peace. They already own everything, or forgive me, just about everything. They want to own it all. And at the end of the day, it takes money to fight wars. It takes money to pay off terrorists. It takes money to buy bombs. It takes money to build aircraft carriers. And these guys are master supernatural chess players. Now, I want to bring something into this. The supernatural element of the game board is being orchestrated by entities that have had almost an eternity of an existence. I'm not talking about human beings. The human beings are merely the pawns. But the way this is going to play out is, I would say this, the best way to say it is, imagine that the rack has been broken by the cue ball. In other words, the balls on the pool table are all in motion. But that pool table, if it were to experience an earthquake, will shift the pool table to whatever degree on the horizontal, most likely the horizontal axis, either east or west, north or south. But the point is that tilt of the pool table, or even a pinball machine, will determine ultimately what goes through the gates or what goes into the pockets. Let me say this: in this game of global financial pool, all the pockets are owned by the bankers. So what W was saying is critical. The flashpoint, you know, is that point at which a material reaches flammability. It gets to a certain temperature and it basically catches fire. What V has done so remarkably is over the year he's been on this show with us, Doug, you, me, the times you've had us, thank you, Joe, thank you, Doug, is laid it out ahead of time. But there's another aspect. When you get the different factions of the bankers, and you get into the words of Jesus, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And the banker's house, whether it's a house of Rothschild, the Rockefellers, or the de Medicis. You know, the de Medicis, when they started the whole, if you will, pawn broker business, they used to hang the pawn balls out on the street. So when people saw the balls, and I think there's a reason for that, they knew that that's where they could go and borrow money or leave their gold to have gold certificates that they're going to travel to get paid in another country. Well, the thing is, right now is, again, pun intended, but all the balls are in motion. Vladimir Putin is a master strategic player. When you're dealing with the Chinese, I was looking at the history of China. Most people don't understand this, but there were times in China's own history where the population was taken to 10% under one of the dynasties. In other words, there was 50 to 60 million people, and the emperor slew all but 7 million. So the point that I'm trying to make in all this is when it comes to the global slaughter, the plan is for the plunder of the planet, and people are simply just in the way. When it's critical for and here's the issue that's so frustrating to me, and V, you can certainly give we're sitting here telling you about the global players, their motives, their catalyst, how it's playing out. W just called in to tell you that we're at, if you will, it's like watching every forest on the planet, and the wind is blowing, and the temperature is rising, and the thing is that at any point it's going to break out. Well, these guys aren't dumb. They'll initiate it, whether it's obviously the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, World War I. And I was, this is just something I was thinking about today in V2. I was thinking, who would be the most important person to be assassinated at this time? And I don't actually have a thought on who I think it would be at this point, but the issue is that what assassination would bring this on as quickly, and does there even need to be an assassination? V, do you want to answer that? Because look, they need now this spark, and basically they need cover, because they can give all the entertainment, all the madness, and the mind control, and all the little gadgets they've got. But the point is, they're still looking for a spark point. And what would you say that spark will be? And W, if you want to, call in and answer that, because again, we're all looking at the ideal conditions, but it appears at this point that the Japanese Prime Minister is provoking China, and they're using probably one of the most festering points of history to make it happen. V?
Back in, I believe, the September or October show, I said that the September 23rd Syria debacle, the false flag that fizzled, that sent the U.S. out of the region, and that basically ensured Vladimir Putin as a serious player on the global scale. I mean, he always has been, but that was his shining moment. That was the moment that kind of cemented it for him. And I said something back then. I said, they're going to try something again. They will be back. And I've always said that the prize has always been Europe's vast and rich energy market. They want to control that, number one. Number two, they want to get the Russians out of the way. Number three, they want to be able to contain China or bring China down a peg or two. And number four, they want to ensure that the BRICS Bank and the BRICS the BRICS Union gets shattered. And I think there's multiple flashpoints. A flashpoint could be a Japanese maritime aircraft going down due to Chinese missile fire over the Senkakus. It could be a terror event that somehow a Black Widow or whatever, tarantula, whatever you want to call them, one of these Chechen, Saudi-backed terrorists get through Sochi and creates a mass casualty there. At the same time, we could have a flashpoint in the Middle East, where you can have Israel or something happen in Syria, or Israel strikes Iran, and God knows what happens then. Then you also have a flashpoint here, where you can have a big enough, horrific false flag that really cements terror into the eyes of the masses, which can cause some sort of a knee-jerk response and give these guys the blank check to go after whoever they want, and again, creating a massive global conflict, because that's where it's heading, because these banksters cannot allow a gold-backed trade note. They can't allow it. They cannot allow the BRICS to be formed. This is for complete, total economic control. They need to institute their digital currency. They need to institute their SDR. That's their special drawing rights, which is their basket of currency. They have to institute that. There are multiple flashpoints. Can an assassination happen? Absolutely. And we all kind of, people who listen to this radio broadcast, we kind of know, who would be a prime candidate for something like that. And this is a very serious thing. So, when, W was talking, I was just sitting back and listening, and I was, you just can't help but look at this whole big picture and see it is a multi-dimensional chess game. And I'm talking about, it's like three-dimensional chess. We heard that term kicked around a few times. And folks, that's what it is. It's multiple moves on multiple levels at varying increments with different strategies all at the same time. And I've never, in my lifetime of studying history, ever seen the board arrayed such as it is now. It's unprecedented, folks. It's unprecedented. And it's important that you listen very carefully to this broadcast, because it has gotten critical. Steve or Doug?
Yeah, V, I got to tell you, this is exactly what I had a long conversation with the intelligence source W you heard today. This is exactly what we were talking about. What he was saying, Steve, you're talking about an assassination or perhaps potential, but the flashpoint here, it all seems like everything. And V, I agree with you 100%. This seems like you were a part of our conversation with the intelligence insider here. Everything is kind of shaping up right now. All the chess pieces are in line. And look, I don't know if we need an assassination or an attempt. Using it metaphorically, perhaps that could very well be the hinge point at Sochi and beyond, because right now the hotspots are not only, of course, the Middle East, but you've got India or Japan and China. You've got some concern there with India. You've got some, of course, all the mischief with North Korea. So we've got multiple levels here. At any point, any one of these matchsticks could break or be struck and cause a wildfire across the globe. I've never look at student of history. I've never seen any type of anything like this before. Steve, I don't know if you have. I mean, all the conditions are right for a third world war.
Well, no, there's never. Hey, Doug, there's never been anything like this before. Again, to quote Jesus, there's never been a time like this, nor will there be again. But when Jesus says there's never been a time like this, I want to throw out a wild card, you guys. I think probably one of the most telling, non-paid attention to statements was when Vladimir Putin threatened to nuke Mecca, okay? Now, why is that even a factor? Was he just basically throwing something out to scare, Prince Bandar? No, because there's more issues at play here. When you take any of the provinces of the former Soviet Union, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Enistan, and as Richard Mayberry used to call that whole area, Chaostan, he's got a problem at some point with radical Islam. And obviously, the telegram that was sent by Prince Bandar was, look, I can control these people or I can turn them loose. That's when Putin shot back. I want to share something. If everybody thinks back to Albert Pike's Mazzini letter, okay, the idea was to turn, obviously, the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians on each other. But at one point, then they, the controllers, basically kill any of the antagonists that are left over. What I'm suggesting, and I just throw this out because it's in my spirit, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I can't get around it. What Putin did was basically, I think, probably a genius-level move. Because basically, if Mecca is gone in a nuclear explosion and, the rock that according to the Black Rock, that the Kaaba, when it's gone, then Islam falls flat, or at least that part of Islam, according to the Quran, that will never happen. So what I'm saying, Doug, W and V, is the fact that at that point, he secures his territories, and it leaves him free to use his proxies, whether it's whoever prepositioned wherever, but at some point he knows he has to deal with it. So I think basically in the three-dimensional chess game, I think, we'll watch, obviously, China and Japan have something and go at it. We'll watch the events escalate as terrorism hits the Russians. And as terrorism hits the Russians and it's traced back to any of the Muslim surrounding countries, I think that's when you'll expect him to move. And somebody said, well, he can't do that. He'd infuriate the whole Muslim world. Not only would he not only infuriate it, but he would deal with it where they would have to basically, those who hold to that, an interpretation of the Quran. So what I'm saying is this. I think it was R.A. McMaster that said basically all religious wars and all political wars are about plunder. And when you're talking about plunder, you're talking about they want your stuff. When you're talking about the Soviet Union, you can't get away from Gazprom, largest natural gas producer in the world. The mineral wealth of Norilsk, the platinum, palladium, diamonds, and most people don't know this, it's not De Beers that controls the diamond industry, it's Russia. When you talk about those who will operate in their own best self-interest, what you see here is this. I think you're seeing a play within a play within a play. Who's the second largest purchaser of gold? Obviously, it's Russia. So the point is that Russia's not stupid. And V, I didn't have a chance to talk to you after yesterday, but when I was talking to the second largest gold distributor in the world today, a guy I've known for, senior president, known for 25, 30 years, maybe as long as I've been in the business, I got a feel for how much physical metal is available through them at any time. And let me just share this. Without new sources coming in, probably $10 to $15 million. That was the platinum, the gold, and the silver. And let's say there's two companies like that. So let's say 30 to 40 million. That's peanuts when you're talking about people who are buying it by the ton. Fast forward to the Germans' request for the repatriation of their gold and the statement they've only gotten, 5 tons back. And then there was a story, I believe it was false, that claimed they had 37 tons. What people don't understand is the United States has no gold. The Federal Reserve, which was holding gold for all of the depositor nations, it's all gone because the two ruling families own it all. And I'm sorry, but it's he who owns the gold makes the rules. And not only that, we're now seeing the end of the reasonable food in America. And I want to deal with that, Doug, because people are emailing me. If, like the person who's the largest buyer for produce in the San Joaquin Valley for one of the biggest supermarket chains in the United States says that oranges are going to $3 to $5 a piece, that hamburgers going to $5 a pound, and milk $10 a gallon, with the compression in the purchasing power that has taken place through the death of the middle class, people are going to starve. And when you take into account all the FEMA camps and everything else, and all of the railroad trains and all that's in play and in motion, you can see what's getting ready to happen. The greatest migration in history, I'm going to say this again, is going to be over fresh water and resources. People have to have fresh water to live, and they have to have food to live, and so to be able to exist. So what I'm saying is this. it all comes down to someone says, well, I don't know about all this geopolitical stuff. Doesn't really affect me. Yes, it does. It affects you because it will determine whether you live or die. So, my take on it is that Vladimir Putin, who I think is probably the most brilliant military strategic thinker of our day right now, maybe only one Chinese general would I put up there equal to him. And if you look at what's happened to the United States military, it's not only been emasculated, it's been destroyed, and the nuclear forces have been basically decimated. And people don't understand that it goes back to a campaign promise. What America needs is a new military, and that should have been everybody in the Pentagon's clue, to basically understand what that means. You guys are going to go the way of the whole earth, and just as we've seen the veterans, it's all orchestrated to bring about a global conflagration. And what's disconcerting to me and very concerning to me is the fact that the average person outside of those who are listening to us worldwide and who are starting to get it tonight do not understand the lateness of the hour. For the past 20 years, prepare. But there comes a time when the time for preparation is over. And then it's initiate all that you have. Like I put on my website tonight, when I get told by a publisher the stuff has hit the fan, it's time to duck and dig in, and he's in a position of privileged information, they're not grandstanding now. V will tell you this, even the rich guys that he knows and the powerful people he knows, these guys are all at it. They're all at it. They are in motion out of the country. They're in motion into their secret lairs or underground. They're all in motion now. And the stocks that are being sold is sold. So I'm going to turn it over to V. Go ahead, V.
Hang on just a second. If I can just interject something here, just to address something, Steve, to address something you said, and this goes with something that W said. Just want to make it clear, and I think you'd agree with me on this. Putin, everywhere he looks, where he sees Saudi faces, Saudi headdresses, he's not fooled. He knows who is behind the mask. Every mask, he knows who the hidden hand is. We are that hidden hand. The West is that hidden hand. The fact is, the key thing is Putin is not fooled, and we should not be foolish ourselves. When Putin, not if, but when Putin does strike back, and he will, for example, the way he did in Benghazi, it's going to be upon us and our interests just as much as our attacks on Putin. The attacks by proxy were against Russia. So we're going to feel a hurt here at home, even if we're not hit directly at home. I just wanted to make that clear to address something, Steve, you said earlier on. I just wanted to throw that in there. Go ahead, V, and I'll turn it over to you.
Just to highlight also what just Doug said, Putin absolutely knows it's the U.S. In fact, that's why he kicked U.S. aid out of Russia completely. And if people don't know who USAID is, USAID, they're a non-governmental organization. Basically, they're a CIA front group. And they're the ones that go into these countries and foment color revolutions, all sorts of divisive tactics that they use in order to quell the population against the government in the hopes of overthrowing the government. They're great at recruiting malcontents, and we've seen that with that Russian rock group that was arrested and thrown in jail. But it's absolutely true. He knows who the enemy is, and if we keep pushing, he will respond, and there will be a response. I totally believe that. And back to what Steve was saying in terms of the banksters bugging out, I'm telling you unequivocally, yeah, they really are. They are operating from various locations. They are digging in. They are getting out. The stock market is rigged. It's a joke, folks. I've said it multiple times. The Dow is overvalued by at least conservatively by 67%. So you can imagine how much of a false bubble that the whole entire stock market is. The real players are gone. There's no more gold. Look, I'm not going to continue, and I can't. if you're not buying now, it's too late. When you go to buy gold when there's a currency crash, and people are like, well, the price of gold went down. I don't care. And I've said that the first day that I've ever came on this broadcast. I don't care. If the price is low, I buy. If it's high, I buy. Why? Simple. Because a false, manipulated market I do not rely upon to indicate to me the real value of a true asset. Once again, I'll say that again. I do not look to a false, manipulated market to dictate to me what the value of a true, real asset is. That's why. If you're not in gold, if you're not in precious metals, it's too late for you. And that window of opportunity is getting closer and closer to closing in on you very quickly. I firmly believe we have, this year is going to be pivotal. Anything can happen, and I think going into 2015 is going to be extremely, extremely critical. Because, look, 2013 we had a lot of things going on. Some guys moved out. We were waiting for an economic collapse. The whole Sears debacle, that was the kickoff point. It didn't happen. But now things are extremely worse now. They've realigned themselves. They've reorchestrated some of the things and plans that they had going in 2013, but they've accelerated it. And now we're seeing, everybody talks about a COMEX default, an LMBA default. These are real now more than ever. I was the one that broke the whole Deutsche Bank story, telling you that every night Deutsche Bank is on the verge of collapse, and it's true, and they are going to go under. That's why Deutsche is out. Deutsche is one of the manipulators in the commodities market. They're out. J.P. Morgan is out. So a lot of the heavy hitters are out. They don't want to, what do they know that you don't know? Okay, that should be thinking, because they can't cover these shorts anymore, and there's massive shorts. So this is playing out incredibly. Economically, there's such great distress. The American consumer economy is finished. There's an incredible article written on my website, roguemoney.net, called Under the Surface. If you're a member, read it. If you're not a member, join and read it. And you will understand. And I go to great pains with charts and graphs that I've put together. You will take a look at it and you will see a very clear picture. One of the best articles I've written. And you need to understand what's really going on. The economy is finished, folks. The real unemployment rate here is 32%. We talked about the market going down 500 points here. The markets are down everywhere, all over Italy and Spain, Greece, France. You're talking about Argentina. What's going on with their peso over there? The nonsense in Venezuela, a very resource-rich country. They have a toilet paper shortage, and to help ease their toilet paper problems, now they have a food shortage. So I guess that takes care of the toilet paper shortage problem. You have the issue of the things that are happening within Venezuela and Argentina that can spill over into Brazil. Again, Brazil, there you go, another BRICS member. That's that's an issue there. So there's so many things that are occurring right now globally that are bringing vast amounts of pressure to bear. It's unbelievable and it's unprecedented. And towards the end of the broadcast, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer some solutions. People always ask me, well, what's the solution? At the end of this broadcast, I'm going to share with you some solutions, a couple of things that might be helpful, especially to those who have a keen desire to do something to get out of the way. Steve or Doug?
Well, we appreciate that, V, for the solutions end of it. There are so many people looking for solutions, and I'm not talking. I made a joke at the end of last hour about, should I keep my 401k? Of course, we're far beyond that. And I know, Steve,
Doug, I almost came through the microphone.
Look, I got to tell you,
I almost came through the microphone,
brother. I felt it in the 2,000 miles that separates us. But it's well. Go ahead, Steve, and thank you, V, for the solution end of it. But go ahead, Steve.
Well, first of all, in the basic survival plan, you've got to ask yourself, how do your basic services get delivered to you? I just had Shannon, I sent her an email to ask her where she's at, but here's what she said, and this is just indicative. I want everyone to put into their thought process tonight, right now, how will you make it if everything you're currently using at this point doubles in price? How will you make it if it triples in price? Because here's what Shannon says, okay? I think she may be in Michigan. She says, Steve, I hope you get this before you hit the air tonight. Major alert. Propane has hit $5.50 a gallon with a maximum purchase of only 200 gallons, and they will fill when you're at 20% paid up front. They're saying, the propane company, there is a shortage. We burn through 3 1,500-gallon tanks in a year. Do the math. People, it doubled overnight, and the tipping point of no return. If you don't have it, you are going to have to do some real gut searching on what it is and is not important, and start. Well, see, this is the thing that I really can't understand, and this is the toughest thing, okay? As one of the founders of the preparedness business multiple decades ago, I find it's interesting because, you know, most of us, all through our business life or our professional life or family life, we've got health insurance. We've got to have it, obviously, because the cost of medical care is so prohibitive. We've got life insurance, so if anything happens to us, our spouses and our families are taken care of. But that's insurance. Assurance is a whole different thing. And we're talking about the basics, Doug, of food and water and staying warm. Now, it's fascinating to me that I get within 72 hours, you'll find this interesting, V, is that from butcher, I mean, I haven't heard from the candlestick maker, but I have heard from the butcher and the baker, the point being that they're absolutely people in the food industry who says, we don't know how we're going to make it. The cattle herds are at the lowest, and the drought is increasing. And I'll tell you something interesting. You can complain about it philosophically, you can debate it, you can march against it, but you can relate historically drought and famine to judgment upon lifestyles that God has historically said this is not acceptable behavior. You can say God doesn't exist, doesn't mean your stomach won't growl. You can say I don't want to obey God, doesn't mean you're not going to be thirsty. And what's critical is people have got to understand, we're not in a time where we flip a switch and next year it's better. I think if you look at the Coriolis effect, when you flush water down the tube, you see, or down a drain, it starts to spin. On the outside, it's slower than it's spinning on the inside. But as it absolutely begins to get more motion, more is being sucked down the drain. Let's call it the Coriolis effect on your life. Because everything these entities that W just talked to you about, that V's been warning you about, that I've been trying to prepare you for, they are sucking the life out of you. They're financial vampires. As Matt Taibbi said for Rolling Stone, giant vampire squid. And that's a pretty good metaphor, or let's say illustration of what's happening. It's the tentacles are in your mind, robbing you of your thoughts. The tentacles are in your mouth, robbing you of your ability to communicate. They're in your heart, robbing you of your ability to empathize. They're in your wallet, robbing you of the ability to be able to make it. And one of the saddest things, Doug, and this is the thing that breaks my heart, is when I get emails from people that they can't feed their family, they can't make it, you know. One of my friends who used to have a really pretty cool website, you know, he had his website stolen from him, he's living with his grandmother, he was out on the streets, and the amount of people I used to know that are on the streets, by the grace of God, I can help some of them, and I have, and I will. And thank God for the many people that have helped you, Doug, and have helped others, and Jim P. in Oakland, and Kenneth P. Thank you, guys. What amazing men of God you are. And I'm talking about J.D. and Jenny. I'm talking about Lisa. I'm talking about all the people I know by their first names because they've had such a heart for God's people. Barbara, God bless you. Again, your generosity is amazing. But you see, the thing that's happening is that the powers that be and the forces that are in motion are so great that only the living God can basically enable those of his kids who have the faith and have the ability to make a difference to make a difference. You see, it's not good enough to say, God bless you, brother. What we're trying to do is help people. First of all, at this point, V made an important point. My guess is that given the postal frustrations, you all heard the postage is going up to 49 cents first class, and all of the issues that are coming down with the cyber attacks, you've got to know the day is coming when there will be no delivery of any packages or any ability to get delivery for a period of time. And by the way, Doug, I talked to my friend Tina today, who has been a friend of mine for years, that they sell satellite phones. And people say, well, how am I going to communicate when, well, I say this, for those of you that have family around the country and want to be able to communicate, the last phone systems that go down will be the satellite phones. And somebody says, well, is it really necessary? I said, well, it is if your communication process is important. So, the satellite phone store, they've got a special on. I mean, they've lowered the prices. I remember when the satellite phones were first out, they were like $15-19. Now they're down to $9.99 and $50 a month for 50 minutes. Believe me, on a satellite phone, you don't call and talk about your favorite team. You call and check on someone's well-being. The stories, I've told the story on talk radio. My wife, when she went down to Canyonlands on an ill-fated canoe trip with her sister and her friend, they overturned, not my wife, but her sister's canoe overturned, and because she had a satellite phone, and this was a miracle, even the park ranger said, there's no way you can get a satellite signal out of here. Well, they had a satellite phone, and by the grace of God, I was able to get a plane in the air, get them rescued out of the middle of nowhere. And if any of you have ever been in Canyonlands, Utah, floating the river, you can get into a place that's nowhere. So the point is that if those of you who are interested in that, go to my website, stevequayle.com. Now, why I'm making this pitch is this. I'm getting emails all the time. How do I stay in contact? How do I stay in contact? Well, the powers that be are going to do everything they can at some point to disrupt. You may only have 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, half hour. I don't know the timing to communicate with your loved ones and say, I'm okay. But everybody needs to have a plan, and they need to have that plan in place, and we're running out of time. The very first two things of any preparedness plan are plenty of water, a water filter, and storage food. Food. Somebody said, well, what should I do? Should I pay off my mortgage or buy some food? I said, will you be happy if your mortgage is paid off and you die of starvation? And I'm being serious. So, I cannot express to people, the day of my pleading, warning, and informing is coming to an end. The day of your pleading, informing, teaching is coming to an end, and at some point there is no longer any more, if you say, opportunity to warn, to encourage, to empower, to basically swift kick in the keister to try and get people to move. And so what we're trying to do for people is to sort out all these different factors. It's just like gold and silver. I get calls all the time, people, and this is true, and they say, well, I can't get my silver or gold. I've been waiting months. You're waiting months, you're dealing with the wrong company. Somebody said, well, how come you can get it? I tell people this. I will pay what I have to pay to get my clients what they have to get. It isn't good enough to send it 90 days from now. We don't know if we've got, 9 days. But what I'm saying is this, is that the urgency of the hour is here. And so if people are, wanting to stay in communication, the parents are on the West Coast, the kids are on the East Coast, or vice versa, whatever, they can go to my website, stevequayle.com, and look at the satellite phone store. When you call that number, ask for a special, because I said, look, give my listeners a deal. And they have. So that's one way to stay in communication. Communication is the thing. When you don't have the knowledge of the well-being of your loved ones, that's when you go crazy. I don't know if you've ever been in that position, Doug, but I have, and it drove me crazy. It drove me actually to my knees, okay? Fortunately, I called Romy, and she was praying with me, and seriously, God so interceded, so much so, I just want to go back to that cool thing that happened with my wife, her sister and her friend, and their other friend, that even the park rangers said this. They said, we've never responded this fast. There's no way we would respond within hours, let alone days. And had they responded in days, 2 girls would have been dead. It wasn't my wife and her friend, but it was my wife's sister and her friend, because they were in the water, and it's fast-moving water. So the point is that by the grace of God, I think it's amazing. We just do what we can do, and then we believe God to help us do. But the thing that makes me the most let's just say this, irritated, is when people say, well, I just am going to trust God. You don't have faith. And I said, do you go to dentist? Yeah. Where's your faith? Well, I mean, you know, you know where I'm going with this, Doug, is somehow people who won't trust the Lord for the little things are somehow turning into super saints at the worst time in their lives. And we read yesterday, Pastor Langford and I, the different scriptures from the Word of God that's talking about that brethren are going to betray brothers, mothers, sisters, daughters. In other words, your own members of your household are going to turn you in to save their own skin. So that's how late it is, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't think that's true, the Stasi and the secret police tactics have all been implemented in the United States. And if that isn't a tragedy beyond tragedy, but Doug, no offense, I see no fury. I see, you know, some concern. If I were Forbes and if I were the major publications land and in the mainstream newspaper, hardly a word. You know why? Because the people that own all the publications are the people that want it. Everything you think, do, and say is in the dossier. And this is a tragedy amongst tragedy. God's going to even the playing field. I want God's people to be encouraged. Their technology will fail them. How do I say this? Their arrogance and pride, their devices, the devices of the wicked that they intend to slaughter us with, they'll all be turned on themselves. And if God's people will pray, we have a historic precedent for the Lord using the very weapons that were designed to destroy His people. They turn them on each other. Go ahead.
You know, Steve just mentioned something about the cattle population. And me being a commodities guy, I just couldn't let that go, number one. And number two, I just see this as a great opportunity to hammer home a point to make people understand. Because, you know, every day, you know, we hear numbers. People don't understand what it really means. Folks, we are in the 3rd year of one of the worst droughts in American history, okay? Now, this could be for a wide variety of reasons, weather warfare, the Ogallala aquifer drying up, all sorts of issues that are occurring. But the situation is this, okay? 60% of the cattle that we have in this country is severely impacted, right? And 69% of the cattle in the U.S., sorry, not 60%, but 69%, are located in areas that are right now facing the worst drought conditions. Not only the worst in over 50 years, but they're going into the 3rd year of this horrendously terrible drought. Well, what does that mean? Well, folks, we have the last time the cattle was this low, they had to, you know, you got to cull the herd. You got to start trimming your herd. And the last time that the cattle was down to about 60%, the current population of cattle, that was similar to what the cattle population was back in the 1950s. Now you might say to yourself, "Oh, what does that matter?" Well, I'll tell you this way. Back in the 1950s, the population of the United States was about 151 million people. Today, we're about 316 million. So, I want you to think about that. Cattle that was bred to feed a population of 300 million can today only feed a population of 150 million. Folks, you have a severe problem. We have some major issues at play over here, and that's just one thing. You know, there are multiple things that are happening within this country. I mean, I just wanted to touch base on that cattle issue. If Doug or Steve, if you want to say something.
No, we've just been hearing how it affects us here right now, present day. I had an interview with a conversation with my neighbor, who is a butcher at a local grocery store. Now I'm talking about a local grocery store, not a chain, but a local one, saying that their beef costs are rising. They've risen. I think 3 times in the last 2 weeks, he said, and he gave me a specific days. And there's the way they package their meat now has to be changed because of the fact that there's a shortage. Not a shortage, but a shortage of the low cost beef, if you will. What he told me was, there's just we are entering into a brand new phase. They've never seen it. This store has been in the family for 50 years, and never before have they experienced any type of supply issue. Well, it's not even a supply issue. It's a money issue. Whereas they could have a family pack like you and I would buy a family pack of beef. Can't do it anymore because it would cost like $50 for like hamburger and such. And he's saying if you got a freezer, buy now. And so that's how it affects us personally. And of course, you gave a good picture of the big picture. So interesting.
Right. And that's the thing, folks. I mean, you have that occurring now. Take into account that you have this drought. Take into account you have a fishery problem right now, thanks to Fukushima on the West Coast. And I'm sure that some of you might have forgotten the whole Gulf oil spill and how that's affected the sea life there. Now you take all these pressures on our food supply. You multiply that by the fact that you have a dollar that is rapidly losing its purchasing power. A dollar that soon will be worth nothing. Folks, if you want to talk about the perfect storm, if you want to talk about the fact that we have the most ill-prepared nation in the world, it's incredible. This past week, there was tremendous amounts of information and protests and venting that was occurring in Davos, Switzerland. One of the biggest things that they were talking about was the NSA spy scandal, was the fact that the NSA snooping scandal with the cell phones, the emails, and all those things. And I believe it was one of these mainstream news channels, I don't know if it was, I think it was MSLSD, not MSNBC, but I call it MSLSD, that during the Davos interview with one of the congresswomen that was talking about the issue with the NSA snooping scandal, all of a sudden the congresswoman gets cut off and says, "This breaking news," and we go into Justin Bieber. That is exactly what the problem is. We are not paying attention to the real issues. We're not keeping focus that there is a massive, high-stakes chess game that is happening right now all around us. And people need to understand. They need to get a real good grasp that this is not business as usual. This is not a cycle. This is not anything but a total and complete paradigm shift that is about to occur in their lifetime right before their eyes. Gentlemen.
All right. Well, we're up against the top of the hour break now. It'll be a great time to take it. I'm going to throw you guys back on hold. We'll be right back after these short messages. Folks, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on this Friday, January 24th, 2014, with our special guest, V, the Guerrilla Economist. His website is at roguemoney.com and stevequail.com. Steve Quail.
It's roguemoney.net, by the way.
.net,
Roguemoney.net, stevequail.com.
And we'll be right back after these short messages. Also, a program note, don't forget on Sunday, we will be joined here 8 p.m. to 11 with Steve and Pastor David Langford. We did a show last Sunday. If you missed that, go back and listen again. It was so important. And I'm assuming this Sunday will be just as good, if not better.
Oh, assume not, it will. Hi, folks. If you're listening to this broadcast, you are concerned about where we're headed. Folks, I want to direct your attention to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Not just any part of that website. Folks, we're in the thick of winter. This won't be our last winter. Well, for some, it will be. But, of course, if we are fortunate enough to continue on forward from this point forward, there will be cold days ahead. Starting tonight. And folks, please capitalize on this. This is an incredible bargain. I'm going to tell you right now, as soon as I get off the air, I'll be purchasing a few of these blankets for myself as well as to send to Brother Marcus. But here's the deal. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. If you navigate through their store. Right now, they have a fleece blanket. It's extremely good quality. It's got a carry strap. It's 5 foot long by over 4 feet wide. It's made of fleece. It's soft. It's cuddly. It's cozy. No, it doesn't come with a binky, but again, it comes with the straps. But this is exactly what you need to keep warm, folks. It's got a matching, it's got the special stitching that provides that the frill finish. It's a great quality fleece blanket. $9.99. Don't just buy one or two. Stock up. I'm telling you, this is a great buy, especially for your car, your emergency kits, your house, your neighbor. At $9.99, you can't beat it. That's a fleece blanket, very good quality with carry strap. Again, compare this to others costing $20 or more. You can't beat it. $9.99. Don't stop at one, and certainly makes a good gift. And buy several. That's all I can tell you. At this price, buy several. And the best part about this is, ladies and gentlemen, is your purchase. You're also providing the same to a veteran in need. Did you hear that? This is how American Survival Wholesale is structured. Not only are you buying one for yourself, when you buy a blanket like this, they in turn are helping a veteran stay warm by giving them the same. And of course, they've got a wide array of long-term food storage products. And don't forget about the light bulbs. Don't forget about the light bulbs. You got to have those light bulbs. Get them before they're off the shelves. And it's my understanding they're quickly being purchased. So get them while you can. 40-watt light bulbs, 3 for $1.50. Can't beat it. It's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Tell them Doug and Joe Hagman sent you. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States.